Prior to 1992, when Rusty Nelson of the Franklin situation was arrested in Oregon, the FBI was given a van containing three-fourths, like it filled three-fourths of the van with photos, films, videos, audio tapes of political officials engaged in compromising situations with little ungrown, I have to leave that word blank. It is Kirby Sommers, and today I want to explain what's going to happen now that Congress has approved a bill that says, okay, we're going to release the unclassified documents. Uh, they've been sent to Trump for signature, but because it was unanimously, with the exception of one person, approved, it doesn't even need his signature. However, they're being redacted. So I was called by several friends yesterday to sort of like give them my take on what's going to happen. And I will tell you that nothing's going to happen. A few people are going to perhaps be demoted, or like Larry Summers, remove himself from public. Okay. But the reason that this is the case is because this, again, the way I've been trying to say, this is part of what is known as this shadow government. JE was involved in the political sphere. We now know through the emails that he was basically very much involved with what was happening, even when Donald Trump's former attorney was being questioned. And it was, in fact, Epstein who was providing the questions uh, in real time. So we've become privy to a lot of things, but what we still don't know and will never know from the, let's say, the authorities, is that this includes something that I'm going to have to spell out. So we know that people that are not of age are called children. However, there are things that are called AUCTION. And I'm going to have to perhaps either spell that word to help you or use another word, maybe, um, I don't know. I have to figure out how to explain this. But this happens. It is part of what this is all about. It did not begin with JE, it did not begin with Craig Spence. So on the screen, I have an actual newspaper of what happened during the case called as the Finders. Now, it reads CIA tied to cult, accused of abuse. And then we know that the people that were investigating this in Florida were told to stand down. These, in fact, were the children in that situation. So I'm going to be talking about stuff that has never been talked about, and the people who do talk about it are either incarcerated. So the person who steps forward to talk about something that he discovered in connection with the Franklin situation, which is I think it's a good case to look at, including the finders, in order for you to understand what is misrepresented as a standalone J.E. Ghislaine Maxwell situation. I've always said this is the same thing. Now, this has been around for hundreds of years. This did not begin post World War II. It did not begin with the Nazis. It did not be. It's been in existence for a very long time. So that's why I have trouble when there is somebody who either writes a book or is part of a documentary or who has a podcast that says, well, this began on this date and it ended on this date. It's almost like the CIA saying that, oh, the MK Ultra program began in 1953 and it ended in 1975. Neither of those two statements are true. The MK Ultra program predated 1953, as I show in my book, Gerald Ford MK Ultra, volumes 2 and volume 1, which is already ready to go. So volume 2 will be ready soon. So here's the thing. There is a whistleblower who said that when he was working in Nebraska for the government, that he witnessed a child, AUCTIONS, and he said that he was involved with the local businessmen who compromised elected officials on videotape in order to control the federal government. So not just controlling the local government, but controlling the federal government. And and again, I mean, we're talking about the federal government now, saying they're coming clean, they're going to release the files. Well, you're not going to hear about a lot of this other stuff that happens, nor will you even hear about the regular stuff that's on the surface level, showing JE as the political mover and shaker throughout several administrations. We had um, all kind, both sides of the fence, Republicans, Democrats sitting in the Oval Office. I tried to explain to you in my previous podcast. Please take a listen to that if you have not, where I explained that in fact JE held more power because he was involved with the geopolitical aspect and controlling the war and the spoils of war and how to obtain the spoils of war, because it's always about money uh, and all of that. So this particular person began working at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. They had an MK Ultra mind control treatment center as part of their program, and we have heard about this from Paul Benassi right here. And the other thing that is not spoken about is the SATANIC aspect. So we see a young Paul Benassi with a word written on his t-shirt. I'm not even going to say the word. There's a lot of this that I'm not going to say while I'm trying to explain to you something that I'm including details in my Gerald Ford 2-volume book about all of this stuff that never surfaces. Because if it surfaces, um, it's immediately shut down. You don't really ever see it in mainstream, and you rarely hear about it from anybody doing, let's say, indie media work. However, he, meaning Benassi, has also named Offutt Air Force Base, in addition to Rusty Nelson, who also named Offutt as a place where they went for their mind control. So this guy was working there. He met some of the monarch mind slaves. He remembers that their code names were based on Indian names, so that and of course we know that the land uh, previously belonged to Native American Indians, and what the government was doing was sort of giving code names to these children that was taken from the Indian, so that it could not be identified. And if somebody said this word, nobody would know what they were talking about. Okay. So, but like they used names like Apache, Cherokee, um, and even the program had a code name. Now, this guy did not know at the time what MK Ultra was about until the information became declassified. Um, One of his fellow employees sort of like, got really buddy buddy with him because this guy was super smart. He was a child prodigy. He was working with uh, Nikola Tesla Technologies in his early teenage years. He had completely rewired the family house at the age of 11. And, he's living in Omaha. And he had developed a microphone, which, back in the day, this is long, long time ago, that transmitted sound beyond a quarter of a mile. So this was unheard of at the time. So members from a certain society, which has its origins in Germany, which I'm going to try to pronounce, Anthroposophic Society, approached him. They wanted from him a lot of these transmitters for what they called and referred security purposes. Um, and so the guy that had recommended him, he discovered, was a PDF, and he was a member of the society. Now, I did not know until I started doing some more research that Larry King was also a member of the society. I don't think I've read it in any of the two books that have been published, or even in the documentary that was made about Larry King, about what secret societies he belonged to. However, he did belong to this secret societies. Now, the secret societies, we know, are populated by members of the elite. That is, they work collaboratively. So we see from the Bush family and the Yale Skull and Bones, that's a secret society. We know that the Freemasons are a secret society. And we now hear about this other one, the Anthropo Pacific Society. Sorry for my messing up that word, but so there are these secret societies that work together, and King apparently was a member of this. So, like, what they did was King was also interested in this wireless mic, which he obtained from this guy. Like, again, I had not come across this information in any of the books or the documentary until I started really deep diving, because King is related to Gerald Ford. All right. Yes, one is black, one is white. Nevertheless, they are related. And again, in the Gerald Ford MK Ultra series, I explain a lot and connected to other people that have never been really discussed as it pertains to this situation of blackmail and human transportation. And specifically, I don't think people have been talking about these AUCTIONS. Okay. So this person who introduced the whistleblower to the society, um, let's call him Ted for argument's sake. He doesn't really name him either. He uses another code name for him. Um, he was really excited. He says, "Oh my God, they're going to have um, this thing that I just spelled, and I'm going to go and rent a male, little one," which he did apparently in February of in the mid 1970s. So long before even the Franklin situation came to the surface, which was in 1988 ish. In 1976, they went to the auction. I'm sorry, I should have never used that word. I'm now kind of like trying to bite my tongue. And okay, but here's the thing, this specific society did something that's really interesting. Um, they would only either sell, rent, lend one of the kidnapped little people, not of age, to someone who was a pure white person. You couldn't have any black in you, which of course we talk about Larry King, but he is a bloodline descendant. And I explain why King was so different in my book. Now, this guy was Lebanese from his father's side, but somehow he was, he was said to be, okay, well, we're going to let you get this little person. And the person who did these so-called checks on people who wanted to buy, rent, or do whatever they wanted at these places that I never hear anybody else talk about was Larry King. So he was put in charge of that. And again, I haven't seen anything like that. And if you've heard about that, please be discreet in the comments section. But please let me know if you've heard about that before. Now, he was invited to a lot of meetings, this whistleblower, where he did witness CP photographs and movies where, little ones were doing unusual things that they should not be doing to each other, and also with people of age, right? And they were ages between 7 and 16. And they were SOLD, as if you're going to buy a sweater. Okay. Um, and then they would leave the premises with the person who purchased the sweater. I hope you're following what I'm saying. Uh, Armed guards were on wherever these things, which happened apparently very frequently, and they were patrolled by armed security guards provided by higher ups. I hope you're following my drift because I cannot get more specific than this. I'm pausing because it is traumatizing to delve into this area. I do it on a daily basis. I was listening to a podcaster who's an attorney um, read some of the stuff that she was, you know, sort of like gathering in response to the JE thing. And she had been R worded once. And then she said something like, oh, this was really, it triggered me and it re traumatized me. And I had to go to bed at 8 o'clock. And then at that moment when I heard that, I realized, oh, okay, I have unusual sleep pattern. Many of you know that I'm up very, very early. And I realized, yes, I suffer from trauma on a daily basis because of my work. However, I deem my work important because I share it with you in order so that you know what's really going on, in order that we can hopefully together somehow stop allowing people to gaslight us and sort of learn to trust what you see, not what you hear. Okay. So during this specific meeting, King told this whistleblower that he had politicians in his pocket, and that these politicians were in Washington D.C. and that it included the White House. And then he was later told that this society intended to compromise the integrity of these politicians by getting them involved in, you know, skin on skin activity and substance in order so that they can be controlled by this other society. Now, all of these secret societies, by the way, behave in the same way. I don't think I have to tell you that Gerald Ford was a 33-degree Mason, as were many other presidents before him. Um, so the so-called AUCTIONS were held in several places. One of them was in northeast of Lincoln, Nebraska, apparently a half a mile off the east side of Interstate 80. The other place was somewhere south and a little east of Council Bluffs. So if the places where the events were held, um, they would use other places. Um, in addition to these other places, they would use a certain castle in another country. Uh, Among the people that attended, and just give me a second because maybe I want to just put up another photograph. Okay, there. I think you guys know what that is, right? Was a father from Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska. And so he described that it became very sinister because some adults were dressed in red and black. Devil. Sorry that I have to spell, sorry that I have to be careful. This platform does not allow a lot of information to be shared with, with the, you would think it was Halloween because it had horn, it had tails, it had everything that you would expect to see on Halloween. But this was happening in sort of like an eyes wide shut themed situation. Now, the person who was actually doing the, let's say, the promotion in order to get the bids, they were bidding on, let's say, what was being presented to them. He wore gold. He wore a gold looking suit, and this guy described it as something that uh, looked like something from the Middle Ages with long tails in the back. Now, on the stage was a little one, a male little one, dressed as a goat, mimicking something uh, that's done by animals in the wild. I mean, it's going to be hard for me to like really share a lot of this with you, but again, I have the whole thing in Gerald Ford, MK Ultra. So he was implicitly told, you have to be quiet because if you're not, you're out of here. So what did this remind me of? It reminded me of the scene of Tom Cruise's character the at the private party, right? Where everyone is dressed in these masks and these robes, and this is happening where he is approached by a person that resembles Bob Hope, and there's a reason why the Bob Hope character is sort of outed by Stanley Kubrick in Eyes Wide Shut, which again, I include this information in my book. And he said, he was really repulsed. He didn't know what to do. He saw that his friend, his one of his business associates, went ahead and rented um, somebody, let's say, of the age of like 10. So 10, that would be the fingers on one hand and the fingers on another hand. So that age, and that he kept him for 2 to 3 months, beginning in June of 1976. And I mean, this is a really hard thing to absorb. I am aware that this is a hard thing to absorb. He went on to explain that King and Rusty Nelson were expendable. And I have said this many times before about J.E. being expendable and about this guy being expendable. So let me just put his. So Craig Spence was part of the Franklin situation. He was arrested. That's Spence in the photo in this old newspaper article. And, he was known to be a CIA asset. And then he was found unalived at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Boston at the age of 49. And no cause of death was given. However, Craig Spence, as I have repeatedly tried to share with you guys, was friends with Richard Nixon's White House, with the director of the CIA, and all of that stuff. And of course, the very same thing that happened to J.E., that happened to Jean-Luc Brunel, happened to Craig Spence, because there are people who are expendable. This is a revolving door. It continues. And again, it's really, really hard for me to sit here and explain this to you guys, because I know this is not easy for you guys to listen to. Um, so anyway, while there's a lot more here that, well, I'll tell you one thing. One of the people who attended one of these gatherings, let's say, was found with his throat sort of like, cut, and his tongue yanked out. And he had been somebody that was involved with kidnapping the little ones in order to put them into this trade that has been ongoing for a very long time, and getting some of these to the East Coast to be transportationed off to the Middle East. And the reason they decided to unalive him was because he started talking about it, so that this man decided, oh my God, even though he became a whistleblower, oh my God, I have to be very careful because I don't want to end up like that. What ended up happening to this guy, because there's a lot more stuff, but again, I talk about it specifically in Gerald Ford, MK Ultra, but I do talk about many layers of what people are only looking at, like a very thin surface, in all of my books. And I've been working on my books for a very, very long time. I'm very proud of them. And, I mean, my work is not for the weak at heart. I think you have to really, like, sort of come at it understanding that you might be looking at something that um, a lot of work has gone into, uh, lying to the public, gaslighting the public. Most of us are kept too busy. We have to work all the time. There are so many, and of course we have the constant fluctuation of the news. It changes every 10 seconds. Our attention span has been depleted. We have become sort of like um, put into a position where we're constantly fighting for whatever available resources are there for us mere slaves, right? So that it becomes me, me, me. Um, and therefore, the elites count on the general public, even if they become aware of something like this, to basically forget about it in 10 minutes. Like, oh, okay, you get a little bit alarmed, you might know something, but then they expect you to just keep going, or to think that, oh, this is too unbelievable to be true, therefore you're not going to really see what's going on behind the curtain. Now, we see a lot has come to the surface, much more than ever before. But as I was telling some of my friends who called me yesterday, one after the other, wanting to know my take on it, my take is that you're going to get some redacted files. You're going to get some of the stuff we already have, like the flight logs and so forth. You're going to get people like Larry Sommers just stepping back from their role. However, what you should know is that this is much darker than anything you have heard about to date. And that information will forever be suppressed. Um, let me just like peruse my notes here. Oh, so what happened to this whistleblower? Well, he's been put in jail for life. He's put in jail for life. They destroyed his reputation, which is, we know it's the playbook. If you step forward and you out and you're a primary source, you are going to be discredited. They're going to put you in jail, or they're going to unalive you. So, they unalived Craig Spence, they unalived J.E., they unalived Jean-Luc Brunel. And, I have like a whole list of other people who have been unalived but it almost makes no sense to share names of people who have been unalived, because some are said to throw themselves out of a very tall skyscraper. Others are said to have died of a sudden heart attack at the age of 45, but we know that they had a heart attack gun even in the 1970s, right? From the church committee hearings, we saw that. Or there's an accident, or, they shoot themselves in the back of the head, like, or we just hear about all of these, oh, the plane fell from out of the sky, and the plane was carrying people that have physical documentation, the kind of documentation that we're all expecting the Congress and the White House to sort of provide to the public. So for me, I know that what I'm going to see is going to be very limited in scope. It's going to be heavily redacted. And, somebody specifically said, well, do you think that this is going to put Donald Trump in jail? I don't think anybody's going to go to jail. Although we have Ghislaine Maxwell, who's in jail, and she's expecting a pardon. I think under the current climate where people are up in arms, and this is still very much what people are clamoring for, it might be a little difficult for Trump to pardon Ghislaine under these circumstances. Now, could she be released and it ends up not being front page of the news and nobody really talks about it? Something like that could happen, because that's how historically, when the mobsters who worked with CIA or FBI were arrested, or the drug dealers were arrested, they would be released 3 months later. It would be in a tiny 1-inch column buried inside a newspaper. So something like that could happen, but I can't see something major like, he's going to pardon her, commute her sentence, and this being like a front page news story, at least not now, because this has still become a very hot issue. Well, again, please be careful with what you write in the comment section, but I am curious to hear your thoughts on what I have shared with you. Okay, guys, until next time.